You woke? Time to get up. Hello and welcome to the Thought You Were Woke No Speed Limit Podcast. My name is Alan, I'm your host. Today, I want to do this first. I got to give you a slight disclaimer. I in no way condone the war in Ukraine at all. I think Vladimir Putin is an evil dictator. He is a bloodthirsty murderer, and he does not deserve to be in Ukraine at this moment, nor do the Ukrainian people deserve to be dying because of his war, nor do the Russian soldiers deserve to be dying because of Putin's war on Ukraine. That being said, I have to talk about how refugees are being treated and how race has something to play with that. Now, I have already talked about this before on a previous podcast. If you want to check that out, you can check it out on either Google, you can check it out on Spotify, on Thought You Woke No Speed Limit Podcast. I'm also available on iHeartRadio, and now I'm available on TuneIn Radio and Amazon, as well as Apple. So, that being said, let's talk about this here with the refugees. Let me give you a story. The best way to start this off is to give you a really simple story. 35 Russian refugees have been camped out for months on the border of Mexico and were secretly brought into the country through a border checkpoint used to process those being deported from the U.S. The refugees, who supposedly were Russian opposed to the Vladimir Putin's action in Russia, were released into the San Diego region in order to appear before immigration officials in months. Apparently, they were held for 2 days before they were released. So I will have to say that they were held for 2 days before they were released into the United States. But they have been released into the United States on their own cognizance. Okay, let's start here. You know how many refugees were brought into the United States from places like Mexico, South America, and even from places like Haiti, right? In fact, let me stop right here and let you see a picture, okay? Maybe many of you remember that photo. That was Haitians at the border, right? It was 1,200 Haitian refugees at the border being chased by Border Patrol who were on horseback. I don't know if they really were whipping these people. Some people say that's not what's going on here, but they were chasing them on horseback. Kind of like the old slave code days, right? If you want to check that out, I also have a video on that. But let's read a little bit further. So, the U.S. is expecting about 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. Remember the 1,200 Haitian refugees at the border? They were too many to come into the United States. They had to chase them back out of the United States. They couldn't come to the United States. But the U.S. is expecting 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. Let me explain some of the things that's going on in Haiti. They had earthquakes. They've had 2 hurricanes. They had their president killed, which caused huge riots and uprising of street gangs there. So people are trying to escape that devastation, escape the terror and chaos that's going on there. So they're trying to seek asylum in the United States. Not unlike the 100,000 Ukrainian refugees coming to the United States. Now, we can talk about other countries: Cameroon, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen. We can even talk about things going on in the Middle East: Syria, Afghanistan. We had a problem bringing in the 20 to 60,000 refugees from that country that we were fighting a war in, that we caused, because we invaded the country. We had a problem bringing those people over here to the United States. We feared terrorism. We feared all those things. But we didn't even want to bring them over here. So we're going to let 100,000 Ukrainian people in. Understand there's a terrible war going on. I have no problem with you bringing them in. But you're going to even go as far as this. The Department of Homeland Security has made it easier for Ukrainian asylum seekers to get into the United States by bypassing COVID-19 restrictions placed by Title 42. Ukrainians are exempt from Title 42. Ukrainians are. No one else is. No other person of color is exempt from this rule. And the U.S. is set to deport more and more people from Mexico, more and more people from Haiti, more and more people from Africa and other countries. But they will allow 100,000 Ukrainian refugees into the country. This is what they're finna do. They're going to bring them into the country. Meanwhile, in Ukraine and in places like Poland and Estonia, terrible things are happening to refugees of color there. Terrible things are happening there as well. African and other non-white refugees, this is according to Newsbreak, and African and other non-white refugees who fled Ukraine now being detained in Poland and Estonia, as recently reported by The Independent. An estimated 52 third country nationals were being detained in detention facilities in Poland. Apparently, they're being held, as I read on. A person identifying themselves as a Polish official denied the claim on Twitter while simultaneously acknowledging the country possibly had reason to detain individuals. From the African students in the report, they are asked to sign documents they could not read and not provide resources to appeal detention decisions. In their signing documents that are in Polish, they're given representation by people who speak Polish and no English, or none of the languages that the students, speak. Now, we've already heard the horror stories about problems for people of color getting out of Ukraine. They're often pushed away from trains and pushed back. Now that when they get to places like Poland and Estonia, they're being detained. I wonder if that's happening in Hungary, because we know how bad Hungary is right now. They're in the process of an election of a president who wants Hungary for Hungarians only. Now, the European Union is requiring that anyone who has fled Ukraine be given asylum in any country that's under the EU protectorate, right? Well, Poland and Estonia apparently have decided to hold these people in place. Now, here's my problem. Showed you the picture of Haiti. I could show you a picture of the kids under the Trump administration that were detained in these camps, and their parents that were detained in other camps. Yet, the United States let 35 Russian citizens who say they're fleeing Vladimir Putin into the country free of hand. Just let them go into the San Diego area. Do you see what I'm talking about here? Do you see the difference, how they treat you? They don't care if you're black. They don't care if you're a person of color. As that one reporter said, the Europeans are the civilized ones, right? The rest of the world are savages. So it's okay for them to be mistreated. In my eyes, you're supposed to treat Yemen the same way you treat Ukraine. You're supposed to treat Somalia the same way you treat Ukraine. You're supposed to treat Israel and the Palestinians the same way you treat the people of Ukraine. The people of Cameroon, you're supposed to treat them the same way as you do the people of Ukraine. That's how it's seen in my eyes. Now, the European Union and the NATO are looking to shore up their embargo of Russia. So they're going to possibly come after countries who are now taking oil from Russia, like the Russians or even the uh, taking oil from the Russians, like even the countries in Africa or even some of the Middle Eastern countries. So they're going to go after those countries next. That will be their next list of sanctions that they're going to drop, right? But here's the thing. Those countries have a lot of black and brown people. They're asking the question, why are they being treated differently than your Europeans? So you want to put all this pressure on for Ukraine, but you want to mistreat people of color. And then you want them to come and back you up. See, that's where you're wrong. That's where the West is wrong. They have to learn to change their ways. It's not just America. It's happening in other countries too, like I told you. It's happening in Poland. It's happening in Estonia. I wouldn't doubt it's happening in France or any of those other places either. People of color are basically on their own in these countries anyway, but they're being mistreated. The war in Ukraine is supposedly between Ukraine and Russia, not between African students from Nigeria or from Cameroon or from any other place or from India. This is not a war for them, no. They got caught there. They are victims of that war just as much as the other Ukrainian people and should be treated the same, equally, wherever they go. America should know better. But it hasn't apparently learned any better. They're still trying to build a wall to keep the Mexicans out, yet they're bringing all these Ukrainian refugees in, 100,000. But hey, this comes from a guy named Trump who called places like Cameroon and Nigeria and Sudan shithole countries, right? But does that mentality go over to the liberals that are now in control, like the Biden administration? Maybe they feel the same way. I don't know. The United States is not clean of any of the same problems that the European countries are having right now. Like I said, the people of color are being mistreated at the border. I showed you that picture. Let me stop and show you another picture right here. Those were refugees in Ukraine. African, Middle Eastern. They're refugees in Ukraine. They're suffering too. Could have showed you some pictures of other places in the world where war is ravaging countries. Yemen, the same devastation you see in Ukraine, you see in Yemen. Same devastation you see in Ukraine, you see in Syria, Sudan, Cameroon, some parts of Nigeria, Somalia, places where war has been going on for years. Eritrea and Ethiopia. War has devastated their countries, and even in the Asian countries out there, in Cambodia, where hundreds of thousands have died at the hands of their brutal government. There's a lot going on in the world. It's not just what's going on in Ukraine. Let's not act like Ukraine is the only problem. And let's not act like the world is not savage altogether. There's a brutal dictator in Russia who's attacking people in Ukraine. Sure, it's a European nation. Europeans can have barbarous things happen to them there too. Just like people in Asia and Africa. Those aren't the only places these things happen. Well, folks, I've talked enough. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Peace. You have been listening to Thought You're Woke, No Speed Limit Podcast.